You remember that extremely talented Miami recruiting class of 2023, right? Some of these guys have already broken out last year as true freshmen, and there's others who are absolutely ready to take that next step this year.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday! We made it. I'm Alex Donno. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and writer for allhurricanes.com. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We are free wherever you get your podcasts, free on YouTube, and part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today. You'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. We got an awesome question from Dan, one of our Locked On Canes insiders, who said, hey, who do you predict to be the biggest riser from freshman to sophomore year? He wants one on offense and one on defense. And of course, he's talking about players who were part of that incredible class of 2023 in recruiting. That was Mario's first full class. It was a top 7 class in the country. Obviously, we've already seen guys making their mark even last year. Rueben Hurricane Bain, arguably the most outstanding true freshman defensive lineman in the entire country. I say arguably, but I think the stats and the metrics actually back that up. You had Francis Mauigoa starting every single game at right tackle, and you had Mark Fletcher, who turned out to be Miami's best running back last year and did that as a true freshman. But just because not everybody necessarily made a massive impact a year ago doesn't mean there aren't others who are ready to make a bigger, if not massive, impact this year, because a lot of times guys don't really start to make that impact until they hit their second year. So, yeah, if I'm going to give you one on offense, there's options here, folks, but Samson Okunlola, the pancake honcho, is the guy that I'm going to focus on. Former 5-star coming out of high school offensive tackle. People forget he was getting on the field last year, not starting like Mauigoa did, but he was getting on the field early last season, suffered an injury, missed most of the year last year. Honcho is healthy, and he's competing for the starting left guard job. And he might end up winning it. Again, this guy is gigantic. He has all the physical tools, was one of the very best offensive linemen. I think Miami got 2 of the best offensive linemen in that class with CC Mauigoa and with Pancake Honcho. And I think Okunlola could potentially win a starting job on that offensive line. And he's going to be a guy who's going to make a massive impact this year. On defense, again, there are options to choose from, folks, but someone who's impressed me so much in the early going here, Raul Popo Aguirre. I love rolling those R's. Popo at linebacker. I don't think he's going to start. So that's one of the differences here. But I still think Popo is going to make an impact. He's going to get on the field, even if Miami only starts two linebackers on the field in most of their formations. They rotate. I think Popo is going to get on the field. He's going to make an impact this year. And actually, Dan, who asked the question, he reminded me of a quote from Popo when he came in last year as a true freshman. When he was coming in a year ago, he said, quote, I'm going to be honest, we're coming in to take people's spots. Now, he didn't take anyone's starting spot last year. That may not happen this year, but he's taken somebody's spot in the rotation. I believe Popo has been outstanding so far, and I've had a chance to talk to that young man a few times. He's just got incredible attitude, hardworking, high football IQ, and it goes with all of his physical gifts. He's around 235 pounds now. I think he's ready to crack some skulls this year. Now, again, there are options to choose from. I don't want to tell you that these are the only 2 players who are going to be big risers from the freshman to sophomore year, because there are others, again, very talented 2023 recruiting class. I'm also going to throw shout outs to Damari Brown. Now, Damari, he might be making his spring practice debut, hopefully in a couple of days, because he missed the first week. He could, at defensive back, compete for a starting job this year, could compete for a starting cornerback spot or starting nickel spot. Chris Johnson at running back, he's another one who's been a very good performer. so far in spring practice and throughout the offseason program. And Chris Johnson is also somebody that I've highlighted. And I think most players are doing this. Thankfully, these guys are still working out hard during their spring break. It's spring break right now. They technically have the week off, but if you're trying to compete for championships and you're trying to compete in the Power Five, you can't really be taking time off from workouts. So Chris Johnson has been out inside the indoor facility, putting that work in. He's got that breakaway speed. I think he's going to get on the field a lot more this year on offense, running back, or he can line up in the slot. He's going to get PT this year. Ray Joseph and Robby Washington, same thing, heading into their second year at receiver. They've both been working really hard and looking good at practice. Now, you could argue that this player is kind of already broken out because he got a lot of playing time last year, and he did score the only touchdown at the tight end position for Miami. But I expect him to be more heavily involved this year as Riley Williams, even though I don't think he's going to be the starting tight end. We'll talk more about that situation in a few minutes, but I think Riley Williams can step up and have an even bigger impact this year. And Jayden Wayne at edge rusher is a guy I think can have a bigger impact this year. He was one of Miami's top recruits in that 2023 class, got on the field a little bit last year. I think he's going to get on the field a lot more and make a bigger impact this year. We get a similar question from another Dan. We're getting hit by Dans in all directions. And by the way, folks, if you want to send a question in for a future episode, become a Locked On Canes insider, and you can try that for free for 14 days. Just click the link in the show description below to become a Locked On Canes insider. You get one-on-one text messages from my phone to yours and vice versa. One-on-one questions and answers. I give you guys recruiting scoops, breaking news. This is actually a great time to do your 2-week free trial, because we have spring practices again next week. I'm going to be out there covering those. So click the link in the show description below. Try Locked On Canes Insiders free. And then after 14 days, if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value on there. So we get a question from another Dan who says, I've asked this before. Do any of our veteran players look improved, especially the ones who were least noticed in previous years? Okay, I've got an answer for you. I don't know how many of these guys were least noticed, but there are certain veteran players, some of them who have already played prominent roles, who I think are getting even better out there. And a guy that I'm going to lead off with, again, I'm not going that deep on the roster to find this one, but I'm going to throw a shout out to Jalen Rivers, Miami's starting left tackle. He's gotten noticeably stronger. And I think this is the type of year where, number one, I think he can show people, hey, like, I'm not just a swing guy. Like, I'm an elite left tackle. If he didn't already show that to you last year, because a lot of people, and Alex Mirabal, the offensive line coach, talked about this. Why is everybody trying to move this guy inside? Like, he's an elite left tackle. And we talked to Jalen during the first week of spring football. I was about 2 feet away from him. He looks even bigger and stronger than he did last year. The body fat is down. I think he said he was around 332 pounds, if I'm not mistaken, and completely chiseled. Like, he looks great, and he's always a consistent performer in practice. And I know his coaches, they appreciate his constant development. So I think Jalen Rivers is going to have a big year as the guy, protecting Cam Ward's blind side. Tight end Elijah Arroyo. He's an important veteran to bring up. Now, he's technically a vet because this is, I think, his 4th year now with the program, but he hasn't played a whole lot because of all the injuries. Elijah Arroyo at tight end, he looks like an alpha in practice this past week. He's as healthy as he's been probably in 2 years. I believe Elijah Arroyo could have a Will Mallory type of effect or impact on this team, maybe even better, because Elijah probably has even more upside than Will Mallory did, who had an awesome final couple of years at Miami. So Arroyo is another one. Another one who's earning a ton of praise in practice and has looked really good to me is Wesley Basaint at linebacker. I think he's going to have a big year. Now, I know I already talked about Popo, and one of the reasons why Popo I don't expect to be a starter this year is, whose job is he going to take in terms of starting? He's not taking Kiko Mauinoa's job. That's probably the best player on the team, or one of the 2 or 3 best players on the team with Cam Ward and Rueben Bain. I don't think he's taken Wes Basaint's job either, because Basaint, he's doing really, really well. He's got that experience. And I think having guys like Popo and Marcellus Pulliam pushing him in practice is going to continue to bring out his best. Another one, Jared Harrison-Hunte at defensive tackle. Looks like he's been practicing very well. He's been earning a lot of first-team reps at DT, so that's an experienced guy who's been on this team seemingly forever, who I think could even rise higher to the occasion this year. We have so much more to get to on this episode of Locked On Canes, including which position is Mario Cristobal going after the hardest in recruiting in this cycle? We got a good question about that. We got a great question about Miami's depth and players they cannot afford to lose. So, folks, you know what you want to do? You want to keep it locked right here. It's Friday. We're all feeling great. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. My friends, did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. The offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Now, my friends, we are also brought to you by the awesome folks at Fire TV. I don't know what I would do without this, guys, because I need to be watching live sports, on-demand sports. It's pretty much my entire life, if you haven't noticed, especially when it comes to college football. And Fire TV is your destination for sports, for live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire Stick TV, the Fire TV Stick, I should say. Those things are great. You can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more. Keep up to date on all the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, lots more. Not to mention great news, entertaining, gaming, travel, cooking videos. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Thank you so much for making this Friday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, we get a question from 818 Cali Kane, my dude. And by the way, I love the fact that we got Canes fans. We've heard from people in Southeast Asia who love the Canes. We got Canes fans in Cali. We got Canes fans in Louisville, in the Chicago area, Indiana. I love this Locked On Canes family. You guys are awesome. But 818 asks us, hey, what position do you believe Mario Cristobal is going after the hardest in this recruiting cycle? He said, hey, the last 2 years it was O-line in 2023, D-line in 2024. So in 2025, he says, will it be wide receiver or DB? Maybe. 818, defensive back needs to be priority number one, and it seems to be priority number one. You notice, and we talk about a lot of these guys on the show, Miami has a lot of irons in the fire for some great players at defensive back, like DJ Pickett. He's the top player in the state of Florida. I believe Miami's in a good position for him, but you're competing with a lot of others, including LSU, Florida State. Miami's near the top, though, for Pickett. Chris Ewald out of Chaminade, who's one of the best corners in the class. I believe Miami is the team to beat there, and they've gotten crystal balls to land Ewald. Friend of the show, Jalen Bell. I'm very close to dropping a Donno ball for Jalen Bell to land at Miami. I think Miami's probably the team to beat for Jalen Hollywood Bell. We had him on the show earlier this week. He was awesome. Miami is up there for 4-star corner Onis Konanbani, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. So you're in it, and I'm sure countless others I didn't mention. You're in it for a lot of really important defensive backs. And just based on, Miami's brought in some good DBs, but they've also missed out on a lot of their top targets in the last couple of years. My belief, again, is that the former cornerbacks coach, Jamil Adai, really good on-field coach, maybe not the best recruiter. I'm hearing really positive feedback on the recruiting that Jameis Jackson has been doing so far. Remember, Coach Jackson, he's only been at Miami for like 3 weeks. So, but I'm already hearing a lot of positives. Like, our guy, Hollywood Bell, was raving about Jameis, and he says he talks to Coach Jackson every single day. So I know he's trying to kind of pick up the slack where defensive back recruiting has been good, but not perfect over the last couple of years. I believe that's got to be the top position of focus. And listen, I think this is also another important offensive line year. Because one of the reasons, and Miami brought in some nice offensive linemen this past year, Derek Plaz, Juan Minaya, Nino Francavilla, the center. Like, they brought in some nice offensive linemen. Last year was not like the elite offensive line class that it was in 2023. I believe 2025 is pretty much on par or close to where 2023 was. So this is going to be a year where Miami's really going to shoot their shot with some of the absolute top offensive linemen. And never sleep on linebacker recruiting. Miami's been doing pretty well there consistently, but Derek Nicholson is a great recruiter. And Miami is, for example, very much in the mix for TJ Alford. He's one of the top linebackers in the class. Got to beat out Ohio State there, though. I believe Ohio State's considered the favorite. Miami probably right behind them there. Alford is going to announce on March 30th. We don't have to wait very long. Miami already has Elijah Melendez committed. He's one of the best linebackers in the class. He's elite. And Miami's heavily involved in recruiting 5-star linebacker Zayden Walker. We'll see what happens there. But I never sleep on linebacker because D-Nick, that dude is relentless. He does not stop recruiting, and players really seem to like him a lot. We get a question from our guy, Hurricane Keys. Long-winded question, by the way, Keys. He says, I know there's been a lot of talk about the increased depth and the difference in players that Miami has won since Mario Cristobal has been at the university. My question is, who do you think is the one player we cannot lose due to injury? Of course, we want to make it through the season with as little bumps and bruises as possible, he says, but football being a violent sport, we know that's not always going to be the case. So just curious who your thoughts are on that one person. I appreciate you. I always love listening to the show. Thank you so much, Hurricane Key. So, my answer is very simple. Miami's got a lot of important players. The team is getting deeper. They don't have like Georgia or Ohio State type of depth or like what Michigan had the last couple of years. Miami's getting deeper, but if there's one player you cannot afford to lose, Cam Ward, the starting quarterback. And yes, I like the entire quarterback room. I think the quarterback room is deeper than it's been in a long time in Miami, but the guy at the top of that room, I believe, is a rare, special player, not just at Miami, but around the country. I think Cam Ward is one of the very best, most talented quarterbacks in the nation, and he's got so much experience. So I think Ward, for as much as I'm high on the guys behind him for the future, I think Cam Ward is worth about an extra 2 wins to this team. That, having Cam Ward versus not having Cam Ward, your expectations with Cam Ward may be around 10 wins. Your expectations with anybody else is maybe around 8. So I can't think of another player on the roster. And it helps that quarterback is the most important position, period. But I can't think of another player on the roster who I believe is worth about 2 wins, right? I mean, he's the guy. That's the guy you absolutely cannot afford to lose. And speaking of Mr. Ward, we get a question from Dat Dude 239 who says, do you think Cam Ward can break a single season passing record this year in Shannon Dawson's offense? And if so, do you know what that passing record is? Only because you asked me, that dude. I researched it, right? I can give you Miami's program passing record and the NCAA's passing record. Now, Miami's program record was set by Bernie Kosar back in 1984. It's been a long time, guys, almost 40 years now. Bernie Kosar threw for 3,642 yards back in 84. So to answer that part of the question, with Cam Ward now under center, Yes, there's absolutely a chance that Ward can break Bernie Kosar's record, because just last year, Ward threw for 3,735 yards, almost 100 more yards than Bernie did. That's what Cam Ward threw for at Washington State. Now, I know, very different conferences. The ACC, they play more defense than the Pac-12. Everybody plays more defense than the Pac-12 did. So it's going to require Ward to have the best season of his career. And it's also going to require a pretty pass-heavy offense, right? Because another thing Miami's got that Washington State didn't have last year is significantly better offensive line and more options in the running game. Ward was asked to do a lot more at Wazoo than he should be asked for at the U. Okay. So, but still, with that being said, I do think Ward is going to attack down the field a lot, because he's so good at it. Number one, he's so accurate and so versatile, and can extend plays and buy time, manipulates the pocket better than anybody, is what Malik Rozier told us a few weeks back. So, I think there's an opportunity. Would it shock me if Ward threw for 3,900, 4,000 yards? That would not shock me. Okay. So the Bernie Kosar, and by the way, the fact that I love Bernie, of course, but the fact that nobody's broken that record in 40 years, kind of surprising to me. I think Ward could be the guy to do it this year. Now, the other record is the NCAA single season passing record. That was set just 3 years ago by Bailey Zappi at Western Kentucky, who threw for 5,967 yards. So I'm going to put in a Donno ball here and say that Cam Ward will not be breaking that record. For as much as I love numero uno, he's not going to throw for 6,000, maybe 4,000 yards. He's not going to throw for 6,000 yards this year. So I think Bailey Zappi is safe, but Ward is coming for Kosar. Bernie, I know you're out there. Ward is coming for that single season record of yours. And I think Bernie would probably be happy to see that broken. Okay. I think he wants Ward to have a great year this year. We get an awesome question about, and we talked about this a little bit on yesterday's episode, why the ACC and the Big 12 laid down and they allowed themselves to get fleeced in this new distribution model for the college football playoff. That the SEC and the Big 10, they're coming for all that revenue. And the ACC and the Big 12, they're just hanging around like the puppy at the side of the table, just waiting for some scraps. You got some extra pork chop there you want to throw them? That's the ACC and the Big 12 right now. We'll talk about that and so much more. We're not done yet, my friends, on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. And I know you're keeping it locked to our friends at Nissan. This week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The Houston Cougars can only be described as an armada. The top-seeded team is as hardcore as it gets out there. So it's no wonder why they're expected to land a top seed in the tournament after their first season in the Big 12. Take that Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. You can't ruin a Friday, is what my friend Joe Rose always says. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. And speaking of brackets, mark your calendar for the Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown Show, Monday, March 18th at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. And I will be watching this even though Miami's obviously not getting in. But experts Andy Patton and Isaac Shade will break down their brackets and discuss everything that you need to know to fill out a winning bracket and prepare for this year's NCAA tournament. Find the Locked On Bracket Breakdown on Monday, March 18th on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We are also available wherever you get your pods and free on YouTube as well. We get a question from D Chef 715 who says, hey, please make me understand why the ACC and the Big 12 would agree to this playoff compensation distribution. It makes no sense to agree. He says, if this is forced upon them, then so be it. But to just say yes and accept is just crazy to me. And D Chef, they did accept it. Like their university presidents apparently voted unanimously to accept it, which surprised me a little bit yesterday. But let me explain. Now, first of all, The new distribution, which is what we're all complaining about, is with the new college football playoff TV deal, they're signing a new deal with ESPN. The SEC and the Big Ten will split 58% of the revenue, while the ACC and the Big 12 will split 32% of the revenue, and the gap could be $300 million plus between those two sides, which is massive. Now, here's why they agreed to it. Two major factors here, in my opinion. The Big Ten and the SEC, they've got so much leverage, folks. They are using threats, whether they're spoken or unspoken threats. They are using threats to break away from the rest of college football for leverage. The ACC and the Big 12 know that if the SEC and Big 10, if they just decided to do their own playoff, they don't need the ACC and Big 12 as much as the ACC and Big 12 need them. You get it? So if the SEC and the Big 10 can just say, hey, you don't want to give us 58% of the revenue? We're going to do our own thing where we get 100% of the revenue. And, you guys are not going to have the Georgias and the Michigans and the Ohio States and the LSUs. Like, you're not going to have us, and you need us a lot more than we need you. So that's a major point of leverage. The other thing is, now the other part of this playoff is they're already approving an expansion from 12 to 14 teams. So we're going to have 1 year with 12 teams. 2025, you're going to have, or 2024, I guess, 2 years you're going to have it. 2024 and 2025, you're going to have a 12-team playoff. And they're already improving an expansion to 14 teams starting in 2026. And I think that the SEC and the Big Ten can use that to kind of pacify the other conferences, since, in a couple of years, they're going to have more opportunities to put teams in the playoffs. So I think those, to me, are the major factors on how they were able to get the ACC and the Big 12. And then, the ACC and Big 12 have virtually no leverage, but they've got more leverage than, the G5. Like, the G5 are just like, all right, however you guys want to torture us, please, sir, may I have another? It's like there's nothing they can do. So they've got, the ACC and the Big 12 have barely any leverage. The other guys have no leverage. We're living in the Power 2 world right now, my friends. We get a question from Mopar Mark, who says, where do we need depth on special teams? He says, okay, we're talking special teams. I haven't, being honest here, and I'm not even sure if there were any going on during the parts of practice we got to watch, but I have not watched a single special team drill in spring yet. But if we're talking about depth, overall team depth is going to help special teams depth, as we know, because a lot of special teams standouts aren't necessarily starters. So you add guys like to make your roster deeper, like Zaquan Patterson, who's, a true freshman safety. He'll probably play because he was a special teams ace in high school. That guy's going to help you. And Miami, if we're talking kick returners, Miami should have plenty of options to return kicks and punts. Got enough speed with guys like Ray Joseph and Robby Washington heading into their second year. So they're going to be, more reliable to do a lot of those returns. Chris Johnson, we talked about him with the crazy speed. Chris Wheatley-Humphrey is a true freshman, has crazy speed. And you still have Xavier Restrepo, who was your primary punt returner last year. He's a very capable returner, as we know. And heck, we even have 2 scholarship kickers now. So, if Andy Borregales ever needs a week off, we got Abram Murray, who was one of the best kickers in high school, who's a true freshman. So we got 2 scholarship kickers this year. So that's more special teams depth for you. A couple of other notes here. On the show yesterday, we asked you guys if Miami fans, if anyone would be interested in bringing Cormani McClain back to Miami. I mean, I say back, even though he never actually signed with Miami. And we asked that question. I don't think we got a single yes. I don't think a single person said yes. Now, there's strong rumors that he's out at Colorado, that he's either leaving or potentially, nudged off the team. Now, here's the reality, folks. Now, even though most Miami fans, if not all Miami fans, do not want his drama down here, the reality is he might end up at Florida State. That seems to be the resounding rumor, is that Florida State could be the spot for Cormani. So if that does come to pass, I look forward to the matchups for the next few years between JoJo Trader and Cormani McClain. I think that would be a lot of fun to watch those two going head to head. Also, my friends, we received, instead of a question, we received a request from one of our awesome listeners, Al, who's a military man. Thank you so much for your service. And Al Al is the best friend of good friend of the show, who unfortunately you guys remember passed away last year. War Beast. War Beast was his handle. If you were in the YouTube live chat at any point for the past couple of years, he's unfortunately been gone for several months now, but you remember seeing War Beast, who was always always one of the first guys in the live chat, one of my absolute favorite listeners. Now, the man behind the avatar, War Beast, is Brigadier General Otto K. Liller, who tragically passed away last year. So our buddy Al, he kindly asked us to honor and remember our friend, because I know Al was his best friend, but War Beast, Otto, he was a friend to all of us here on Locked On Canes. And, if you guys, maybe if you've only been listening and watching for, a few months, you don't remember Otto, but for those who are the everydayers who have been with us, ride or die, you remember War Beast. And I want us all to remember War Beast. There he is, Brigadier General Otto K. Liller. It was still so tragic when he was taken from us. May you rest in peace, my friend. And I'm always thinking of you, and I'm thinking of your family, your wife, and your kids. And of course, I'm thinking of Al. And thank you so much. And War Beast, I know you're watching us from heaven right now. And thank you so much for your constant support. And thank you guys for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Hope everyone has an awesome weekend coming up. We do have weekend content planned, and then you got Miami Pro Day coming up on Monday. Practices resume on Tuesday. We will talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.